the Dharma, profound and subtle, seldom met in countless ages, now heard and practiced, may we realize the Tathagata's truth. For all beings' liberation, generate bodhicitta. Next, I will take a few moments to briefly introduce to everyone the 100 Verses on Wisdom, an important and respected collection that offers valuable insights into the nature of wisdom. I will be discussing its main ideas with you. Previously, we discussed 27 verses. Starting today, from this moment forward, as we now embark on this journey together among the collection known as the 100 Verses, now, there is still more than 70 verses, left 72 verses. As everyone studies this 100 Verses on Wisdom, most people acceptable, some think there's nothing to understand, just taking a look is enough. Maybe that is indeed the case, but perhaps, although it seems rather simple, when I first looked at it, nothing I didn't understand, but later, as I read further, there were parts I didn't quite grasp. Afterwards, if possible, I provided a simple, literal explanation. Perhaps when explaining it, there's a deeper sense or feeling. If we were to talk about Dzogchen or some great Dharma, maybe a lot of people would be eager to listen. But as for this teaching, perhaps there are some who haven't even heard it, but that's okay. As long as people have faith in the Dharma and are willing to accept it, they can listen. If not, even if there's not a person, that's fine too. We're absolutely not charging any fees here, or you must have this requirement. However, if we are always aiming too high, seeking lofty teachings, our basic way of doing things, if we lack understanding of basics in what to do, then in our lives, things that should have been very simple end up, due to various circumstances, causing us to lose many opportunities and chances for spiritual practice. Many of us, including both managers as well as ordinary practitioners working in various fields and industries from all walks of life, often encounter situations. These matters are not significant, but because we lack wisdom, we end up unable to face these situations. Such occurrences are indeed quite common. So I think that for us to study such treatises, humanities teachings are particularly important. The ancients valued this point. Our precious Guru Rinpoche also throughout his life taught the treatise on noble conduct several times. I didn't hear it. He also taught the Sakya aphorisms, and he gave many teachings on the treatise on the two codes as well. So he always placed special emphasis on education in this area. Therefore, I think that each of us in this book, 100 Treatises on Wisdom, you should perhaps try to find some faults of your own. Perhaps some of you feel criticizing you daily. But in fact, I am not targeting anyone in particular. However, when simply teaching this treatise, naturally, some shortcomings, including my own or shortcomings of others, I just wanted to say it, so I went ahead and said it. If I notice others or myself have some merit, I will also mention it, just to be clear. Some of us might not singling out, but if you feel that what I say relates to you, perhaps you really do have some shortcomings in that area. Otherwise, my words wouldn't resonate with you so directly. So this reasoning is also indeed very important for us. Really, like a bitter but effective medicine, it might not be pleasant, and you might feel quite uncomfortable at the time, but in reality, as practitioners in our daily work, having someone point out your faults might actually in fact be a good thing sometimes. Otherwise you'll never know, and you keep thinking you're amazing and feeling smug, but in reality, whether it's your level of spiritual practice, it is often said that the principle of being a human being is, as we know, very bad. So I think in our lives, having someone point things out to you might actually in fact be a really good thing. Today we'll continue discussing the cunning use deceitful words, and the wise fail to analyze them carefully. Just as one who doesn't understand the meaning of a song, wild beasts are ruined by it. Here, the so-called cunning person often uses flowery words, making use of a wide variety of deceitful, underhanded, and cunning tricks and tactics, all carefully designed to mislead, manipulate, to frequently and often deceive and mislead others. In this area, he is very skilled because of his specialty, and he is especially adept at it. But some kind and gentle, virtuous people in their hearts, if they don't use wisdom to judge the situation, and also don't let others understand what's going on, or if they don't consult others, they will easily and simply believe others and take it as the truth. As a result, sometimes you might end up very unlucky because you didn't think things through carefully or observe closely. In this case, as mentioned the other day, Ifam Rinpoche said, many misfortunes and disasters in the world, it is caused by unknown or by lack of observation. In the end, that's how it is. It's just like some wild animals in the world who become captivated by songs they have no idea at all, and don't try to detect the source, and as a result they end up being killed by the hunter. Indeed, in this world, we often think of ourselves, for the most part, as pretty good people. In other news, or when people around us get deceived, we think that person is like that and never relate it to ourselves. But if we examine ourselves, maybe we're deceivers, or maybe there are many deceivers around us, but we are unaware, and they also pretend not to know. When it comes to other people's words, behavior towards others, on one hand you can trust them and maintain a pure mind, but if we are too focused on keeping a pure mind, we might end up deeply regretting it later. Therefore, as thoughtful, wise individuals, we should always be observing at all times, is it really true or false? Constantly observing in this way is extremely important. Observation is discrimination, but such discrimination lets us distinguish truth from falsehood. If you don't do this, you may indeed encounter all sorts of situations and have no idea at all. If you discover that someone is cunning or that someone is wise, use different approaches when needed. Don't only maintain a pure mind. On this point, the treatises of the wise are in conflict. For example, in the Sakya aphorisms, which we discussed before, you will remember. How is this phrase expressed? It is stated in the ancient aphorisms, before the cunning one must be cunning. Before the honest one must be sincere. Before the fickle one must be steadfast. It refers to ancient times like Songtsen Gampo in their short, meaningful aphorisms, or in their codes of conduct and teachings. It is all mentioned. For example, in Songtsen Gampo's 16 rules, 6 rules, and so on, what do they say? In front of the cunning, you should be cunning. Narrowly, some people define a cunning person as someone who deceives you. That's what they call a cunning person. But in Tibetan, the term in general has a broader meaning. It can refer to people who are generally untrustworthy in many matters, cunning people. Because you trusted him, many things turned out to be, you end up suffering all kinds of serious harm and various threats. So this is what is meant by the cunning in a broad sense. When facing wise, you should be truly sincere and upright. Be honest and direct. If you are especially sincere with them, they will absolutely never cause you any harm. With such people, you really also shouldn't play little tricks all the time. There are the restless people, that is, those who are often unpredictable, people who are constantly drifting and unsettled. You also can't just go with the flow. Otherwise, both you and others will end up being blown away by the wind. In front of such people, you should remain steady and firm. This is what Sakya Pandita taught everyone, and it is very important. In our current era, so-called cunning people, often, such as those individuals who commit online fraud or engage in internet scams on various online platforms, are actually quite considerable in number. A few years ago, due to the pandemic, everyone stayed home and went online. A group of people used the internet to scam many unsuspecting others. So after the pandemic ended, many resisted returning and continued to fall victim to online scams. Not long ago, it seems it was in Myanmar, in the northern part of Myanmar. There was a crackdown, around 269 people or something like that. Most were Chinese, and there were also some people, including those from various neighboring small countries as well. In fact, actually, cases like these are becoming more and more common now. In fact, these are truly cunning people. So the words and actions of cunning people in particular make it really very easy for us to believe them. Are there cunning people among us Buddhists? There still are, including things I've mentioned countless times in class now, but some people may not attend our classes and may not study either. Some people, for example, set up certain specific groups and then claim that a certain Buddhist institute or a certain monastery is holding a meal offering or doing all kinds of virtuous deeds. People start to take it as true, and after carefully saving up little by little, gradually over time, they send all of their hard-earned money over to their families. In the end, maybe part of it is used for meal offerings or releasing animals, but most of it, in the end, ultimately ends up actually, as you might expect, in their own pockets. We're seeing more and more of this phenomenon nowadays. If we're not careful, in the future, even Buddhist groups will become quite complicated. Among Buddhists, there are some who truly have genuine practice and realization, and some who have faith in their teachers and the Three Jewels, and they are still very good. But there is also a considerable portion who are mentally unstable or who behave abnormally, such as in certain situations, and people with ulterior motives. Buddhism today is not entirely pure. There are all sorts of people within it. Some are that way because of ignorance, some driven by intent. It's hard to say that everyone is a good person. So we also shouldn't, just because we see a Buddhist, everyone is indeed to all Buddhists or give rise to wrong views. This is not reasonable. But at the same time, just because a high monk is truly remarkable or a few disciples are especially proper and in accordance with the Dharma, it doesn't mean that the entire monastic community is necessarily a worthy object of offering. If you believe in everyone just because of that, there are some who wear the robes of Shakyamuni Buddha, but inside they commit all sorts of illegal and unlawful acts. There are quite a lot of such people. So as Buddhists, we also shouldn't be swayed by flattery, heed superficial remark. We should have the ability to observe for ourselves. In the world, there are both genuine and fake people among non-Buddhists. Among Buddhists are true and false. This is not something unusual or strange at all. Shakyamuni Buddha's time, there were situations after Buddha's parinirvana, over 500 years have passed until today. It is impossible for Buddhism to become ever more pure. Therefore, as Buddhists rely on spiritual teachers, or in other aspects, we should observe carefully Buddhist teaching can withstand any scrutiny 100%. As for Buddhists, some are extremely pure, possessing bodhicitta and a pure mind, but for some, that may not be the case. So we must make an effort to learn to be good at observing, especially in our daily lives. Next, let's talk about the wise, even with enemies, must always remain gentle. A vine, by being soft, can wind its way to the top of a tree in this world. There are some wise and far-sighted people. Their sworn enemies and lifelong rivals interact with them with a very gentle attitude. They are able to do this, and as a result, these enemies are gradually influenced and transformed. Such cases do exist. It's just like how we often see vines in the world. It is extremely soft, and it genuinely appears to be rather weak. But in fact, because of the remarkable skillful means of its softness, in the end, it winds its way up the towering tree that reaches into the clouds. It climbs along the tree, growing higher and higher together with it, side by side. It eventually reaches the very top. Such things do happen. So here, as we can see, it is said that one can influence others through gentleness. Of course, in our world, people often say we shouldn't be too soft, because if we are soft, good people are taken advantage of, and good horses are ridden. If a person is too kind, others will take advantage of you. You must really become strong, especially in some Western cultures, including certain unique and traditional calm Tibetan cultures, such as people believe that you must start by, even if you have to pretend, you should act tough and rough, because that way it's less likely that others will bully or deceive you. Otherwise, you will often be insulted by others repeatedly. This saying exists. But in fact, if we look at it from the perspective of Mahayana Buddha's teachings and combine them, for example, with certain Indian treatises, in fact, in the end, gentleness and softness, in truth, truly should be the most effective method in practice for most situations. We often say softness overcomes hardness. This means that sometimes being gentle or flexible can be more. It was an indestructible thing. But if you approach it with true gentleness, you will gradually and eventually in your own time find your own unique way out. Otherwise, if you meet force with force in a direct confrontation, eventually at some point one side will sooner or later have to break. So for some of us, from a young age, deep down inside, I am this person and a strong person. I just won't give in or submit to anyone at all. Whether it's my parents, my guru, my teacher, or even my boss, as long as someone treats you badly, I really have to stand up for myself. I am always a very strong person in front of anyone. But at certain times, maybe you have succeeded many times with this approach, but at some point you eventually end up ultimately destroying yourself. Other than that, to be honest, there is no significant or substantial meaning in this context, just like in some other religions. It's said the same way. Nothing is softer or weaker than water, yet it can overcome the hard and strong. In this world, water actually appears to be the most gentle of all. We say that the highest good is like water. It is extremely, extremely soft, but it is also incredibly strong as long as it truly wants to break through even the hardest, most solid stone. Over time, it can wear it away. If we have some particularly skillful and expedient methods, we should, in front of anyone, learn the gentle and important virtue of gentleness, the quality of being gentle. Try it out. In this way, it might be very good for both you and others. Among all of us who are present here today, some of you learned from your parents since childhood. Some is the education you get from school. You might not realize it, but in fact, some of your everyday habits were actually formed by your teachers over time. But these habits, in some sense, might be useful, but in some situations, they might not necessarily be applicable. Of course, the profound teachings of Nagarjuna Bodhisattva are also not meant to apply to every single matter in exactly this way. Don't take it that way, because any theory, in a certain sense, in its own way, serves its purpose. And when we, as future generations, read it, we can also recognize its focus, its sharpest point. It is in this sense. The analogy he uses is also in this. Otherwise, in general, with any metaphor, there are similarities, but also differences. Metaphors are not made based on the differences. Therefore, we are here. Sometimes it is indeed the case that if you are too soft, you really will in fact be bullied by others. In the teachings, it is said one must be strong and hold your head high in every situation. Otherwise, you will always be bullied by others. The bullying just gets worse and worse until in the end you can't even survive. This is even shown in some current popular TV series and movies that we see on our screens today every now and then. In our world, we must be strong in order to thrive. Only then can we survive. Otherwise, you will always be trampled underfoot by others. So in the end, I lift my head up. But this is just a kind of image that is often simply depicted in movies. In fact, in real life, perhaps the director, for example, some movie directors, to the wisdom of Nagarjuna Bodhisattva. It's not necessarily true that what some ordinary directors say nowadays is actually correct. Long-term, per the teachings of Mahayana Buddhism, gentleness and compassion qualities, even if they don't bring quick or immediate results, even if the effects are not seen right away, won't cause you any significant loss or harm, not at all. If you are extremely tough, and the other side is tough, when two opposing people confront each other, it's like the current situation between Ukraine and Russia. Both sides refuse to give in, and in the end, the heavy losses are suffered by both parties. Totally view, I yield to you, maybe my reputation will take a slight hit, but in terms of meaning, in this way, many lives are protected, whether we look at their wars, historically, countries, or the bloody battles and holy wars between faiths. The consequences brought about by these are indeed, what kind of outcome does so-called toughness bring? Not even caring about their own life. People around them end up with nothing left. Is this really what we humans truly need? If you face things with compassion, at most you might lose reputation or wealth, but in the end, many precious lives are still safely saved, just as they were before, with nothing lost or changed during the process. There's really no need for such unnecessary cruelty in this world. From a broader perspective, generally speaking, don't learn from what we've suffered before, the particular meanings of education we received in the past. The mindset of many people nowadays has indeed, quite truly, become something else. It has already taken on a certain definite shape, forming gradually and steadily. And now it's very hard to change. This covers the majority of our audience here, people in their 20s and 30s or older. For those over 20 or 30, people's thinking has basically solidified into a certain form. In your childhood, the education that you receive from your parents and your school, and the perceptions and experiences from your environment have shaped your outlook on life. If you want to change your outlook, unless you are someone who truly has confidence or someone who is wise, only then can you change. Otherwise, as it is often said in Buddhism, Nagarjuna Bodhisattva said it this way, but I'm just going to insist, I will never, ever bow my head. That's just the way I am. Maybe at a certain point you will come to understand on your own, if I hadn't been like this, then I really would have been extremely foolish. Maybe towards myself, when we Tibetans from time to time happen to make a really big mistake, we usually start pinching the flesh on our cheeks with our own hands, thinking, I was so foolish back then, I really truly regret it. Such situations. Next, let's talk about a narrow-minded person who is unwilling to consider other perspectives or ideas, cannot achieve their wishes in life. Be mindful and make good choices. Your words should follow the majority. Some parts may not have following metaphors, while some do, which I will explain in detail next. For those who are especially narrow-minded, they cannot fulfill their wishes. Your intentions end up being completely contrary to the achievements you actually attain. You really can't truly achieve what you actually wish for. Why is that, perhaps? Be mindful and make good choices right here, as it clearly says, after carefully and thoughtfully making important decisions, your words should also match the majority. Only then is it simply more reasonable. This means, for those of us who are in particular narrow-minded in our thinking, as some people might say, because our minds are closed off, if that's the case, if you act according to your own narrow way of thinking, you simply definitely won't achieve what you wish for, because your mind is stuck there. So if you have certain thoughts in your mind, but when you reflect very carefully and truly observe, and then let your words naturally align with those of others, it might actually turn out even better. What's the reason? Because our thinking is extremely narrow-minded. Nothing much to it. If thinking is narrow-minded and you speak in the same way, not going along with others, the outcome you get might be even worse than expected. For some people, if they are narrow-minded, innate, it is an innate. Some people can gradually and steadily broaden their minds through continuous learning over time at their own pace. There are cases, but they're rare. Some people are born with a particularly narrow mind, few words to them. Fragile heart is from being narrow-minded. In many Tibetan schools, some children, maybe because they often look at their phones or watch TV, internet-driven, some students have jumped from buildings to commonplace intolerance. If one follows such a mindset, it's impossible to connect with others. If someone is especially narrow-minded, there are things they simply cannot accept. But try to observe with wisdom, and if your words are accommodating to others, this is also a key point. In this world, narrow-mindedness is indeed quite common. There are still quite significant and noticeable differences in many different ways between people. Some people can accept anything in their hearts without hesitation or doubt, but this kind of acceptance does not necessarily mean being indifferent. Like a stone that simply doesn't care about anything at all, it's really not like that, not at all. A person must have a certain level of knowledge and wisdom to truly be considered broad-minded. In order, the two codes of conduct, only when one's mind is extremely broad and possesses vast insight can one truly be counted among the genuinely and authentically virtuous. Therefore, having a broad and far-reaching vision is without a doubt extremely important. His Holiness often says, no matter what happens, whether it's good or bad, you can get through it. Once you become someone with a truly broad mind, possess knowledge and insight, then you can become a true human being. At that point, you can be counted among real people. But before that, if your mind is very narrow, if someone just glances at you or says a word, or even just interacts with you a little, you immediately get angry. You immediately burst into tears, immediately feel deeply hurt. People like this truly often have a hard time getting things done in their daily lives. Now, for us, including some of the volunteers and some staff members as well, truly, on one hand, we are very grateful to them because dedication in departments is important. But on the other hand, because of their own narrow-mindedness, their own temperaments, their own personalities, it is hard for many to interact with others. Now, if there are no special illnesses, some jobs, many people are actually able to handle them. 810 HRSD. For people living in cities nowadays, this is quite a normal thing, going to work. Some people have to spend 2 or 3 hours commuting. Many people can physically handle this, but the crucial thing people can't handle now is interpersonal relationships. Among our volunteers, this happens too. Can't manage relationships, including the Dharma teachers in each class. These people, as they continue studying, no issues socially. We've all been studying continuously since we were young, so we haven't really experienced much group life yet. Logically speaking, we should be very adaptable, but in reality, the more we study Buddhism, the more withdrawn we become. Insisting on our opinions is worsening. Everyone's selfish. This is a kind of sorrow for Buddhists. If everyone could be truly tolerant of others and genuinely forgiving of mistakes, if we could really understand others, if that's the case, you go along with others. You don't have to be so narrow-minded. Just be yourself and let others be themselves. That's enough. Other people's business, stay out. This way, your interpersonal relationships should be very good. If we get too involved, well, that's not good either. Among us Tibetans, there's a saying, An utterly cold-hearted villain in office doesn't let the elderly bask in the sun. When some petty people become officials, elderly sunbathe. They say, "You're here, you can't sunbathe here." Or to use another saying, if you put a little goat on your head, it will often, quite unexpectedly, defecate and urinate sometimes direct right into your eyes. Inferior people is given some power. When you have a little bit of status in your life, they become arrogant. Sure, this needs wisdom. Don't ignore everything. If you're in charge and you don't take care of anything, that's not right either. I take care of everything, but not what I should. Or if you interfere in things you shouldn't, that's not right. Among those in charge, you can often see this happening. This includes assistant Dharma teachers and counselors. After a period of time in these roles, I hope you Khenpos and Khenmos also below. How is this Dharma teacher doing? How is their authority and credibility among those below them? You could say, take a moment to really get an understanding tree to see and consider how things are from below, from a different point of view. Consider this counselor. Counselor handles superiors, but not so great with those below. And the counselor, who is also actually pretty good with those above, still acceptable, and also does well with those below. Actually, as human beings, we should be able to look both up and down to see both perspectives. This is very crucial. Therefore, people with narrow minds only focus on their own afflictions. Every day they're in pain, every day something is wrong. Just like dust in our eye, it feels especially uncomfortable. But if there's a large speck of dust in the palm of your hand, you feel little. When there's a little bit in our hearts, among the people I know, really have an extremely, extremely narrow mind. Sometimes I even feel really very sorry for them deep down inside, thinking, oh, to have such a limited human existence. It's especially painful, sometimes I think. This is karma, that every sentient thinking or talking about it, there is no way to deal with it. It's just a little bit at a time. Things meaningful, sometimes you can't control any of it. Meaningless things, all those little things, worries, pain, anxieties. This really shows that people's wisdom does differ. So regardless of who we all are, everyone should also compare this. Completely open your mind just for a moment. But it's not simple. You can't open it any time. But you should know that a narrow mindset brings a lot of suffering. Narrow-minded suffering can be many times greater than that of ordinary people. If you are someone with a broad mind, it doesn't mean... Broad-minded means ignoring everything, letting things happen as they will. That's not what it means. A truly open-minded and wise person, they are definitely good at handling important matters. They don't fuss over trivial things, but many of us sometimes ignore major issues and get hung up on minor ones. A single word from someone, or even just a look, or the way someone walks, or even how much food is in your bowl, such tiny things can make us miserable for half a day. We can't analyze big, nor any possible way to solve them. When faced with such situations, we just stand there dumbfounded. Besides, we simply can't come up with any clever or convenient solutions ourselves. This is the difference between wise and foolish. Therefore, Sakya Pandurita, in his Subhashita Ratnanidhi, specifically examines the differences between the wise and the foolish. I've also encouraged everyone to read it before. To read the Treasury of Elegant Sayings, not studied in years, maybe even 20 or 30 years. When I was a student, I really used to read these sayings often. Later on, I felt that in my own life, sometimes guiding texts and profound teachings seemed to be no match for the education found in ordinary literature. In these respects, although I really haven't been a very good person, I know myself that I'm not. But I feel that whether it's interacting with others or doing anything at all, at least I have some basic understanding, thanks to Masters of the Past and the great blessings and power of these teachings. Speak gentle words and sometimes act like a cat. Act skillfully with expedient means and never insult anyone. When we speak, It's best to use gentle language, not to start off right away. People open their mouths, immediately say things that are especially harsh and aggressive. As soon as the other person hears this, they instantly feel uncomfortable, no matter what is said. Some people never hear a single harsh word in their lives. There are big differences between people. There are significant differences between individuals. From our perspective, a white yak and a black yak look exactly the same in appearance, looks outside, but our language, personalities and mindsets, the overall quality of a person there are huge differences in every aspect. So we usually say in language, it's best to use polite and civilized language. Occasionally in the process of doing things, we also need to be like a cat or some water birds, or like certain beings in this world. The thief from the Bodhikaryavattara, using their methods to accomplish things. This is also a skillful means. If you do it this way, then others won't harm you either, most likely in any way. Because your actions are more low-key and gentle. Whatever we do, like Dharma teaches, teaching, benefiting sentient beings, you should understand the right timing. Understanding the timing, sometimes you may need to be high profile. For example, when the previous Guru Rinpoche went out to spread the Dharma, at that time religion had just reopened. When religion reopened, things were convenient. So wherever the Guru Rinpoche went, whether it was a motorcade, or a grand and impressive procession of beautiful horses to warmly welcome him, or groups of enthusiastic people gathered together to joyfully receive him. They would even play some of the spiritual songs of the sixth Dalai Lama. At that time, the Guru Rinpoche really did indeed do such things. Some people felt it was too high profile, not appropriate, but it suited the era at that time. After another era had passed, the overall atmosphere, the times and all kinds of circumstances, there were especially big changes. At that time, being perhaps a bit more reserved, more low-key and gentle, whether in speech or in action, and not being too high profile or ostentatious in interactions with others. Nowadays, we basically just post a Weibo, I'm in the quiet forest, I'm eating. Other than that, now, both inside and out, if you look at all the various circumstances, for now, this approach might be better. If you are really too ostentatious at this time, you might encounter obstacles or difficulties. Some actions are actually very, very simple, just a very simple thing, but in the end, some things might get messed up along the way. In the past, the Book of Rites mentioned it was during the Warring States period. There were a fortunate one who was freely giving food to passers-by, to anyone in need. There was someone who was extremely, extremely hungry, but he carelessly shouted out very loudly, "Hey, you, come over here," and so on. At that very moment, the other person felt a strong sense of, at a time like this, for him to actually call out to me like that is an insult to me, a kind of humiliation. I would honestly rather starve to death than accept it. Maybe this is just a legend. Recall Book of Rites, something like this. The person starved to death and didn't go. So sometimes, whether we are being high profile or the way we speak or the things we do, just one single thing could completely ruin your entire future. Or you might find yourself unable to do many things. Of course, on one hand, this also requires your own wisdom. And the protection of Dharma guardians like the White Dharma Lord, their protection is also very important. Some things in this world that seem extremely serious if you commit them, but you can still definitely get through them. Sometimes it's really very simple, a really small matter. But later, as time goes on, the overall situation gradually becomes more and more serious and concerning. There are cases like this too. If we are strong in our hearts, but our actions are soft and gentle in their nature, then no one will be able to attack you, absolutely no one. A person must first demean themselves before others will demean them. We should very carefully observe ourselves. Each and every one of us should take the time to do this. no such case. If you do things that humiliate yourself, then later people will, without a doubt, definitely humiliate you as well. Just like in our world, when something has already rotted, then insects have the opportunity to gather there. Many of our situations regarding a person's character and personal behavior also have significant differences. Next, it says, the hunter kneels on both knees, all his limbs curled up and hidden. He sings a beautiful song, wouldn't that kill the wild beast? This is a metaphor. Earlier we said many things should be done quietly and secretly. They shouldn't be too blatant or too obvious in their actions, and it's important that what they do remains subtle and not easily noticed by others. Just like a hunter, simply in the world, he also kneels down slowly on both feet, carefully curling himself up, drawing his body in tightly. His body is also hidden somewhere in the woods. Then he slowly starts to sing a beautiful song. As for the wild beast, it feels there's no danger to itself. And on the other hand, it's drawn in by the song. In the end, the determined hunter ultimately obtains what he wants, even if he has to patiently endure some grievances or discomforts along the way with unwavering resolve. Ultimately, he still eventually gets what he aimed to achieve. Of course, from a certain perspective, it could be said that using a hunter's tactics as a metaphor for human behavior seems like a negative kind of analogy. But here, the metaphor means when we do anything, if we're even just a little too showy or too high profile, it might not work out. In everyday lives, sometimes much like the patient and observant hunter, our actions are, in certain situations, especially deliberate and carefully considered. Simply keep a low profile or be silent. He doesn't make himself too obvious on the outside and handles his affairs in that way. Perhaps this is sometimes necessary. Sometimes in our pursuit of the Dharma, we all have to endure some grievances, whether it's during the day or at night, at any time, no matter when. For many things, we can't just simply say, well, because I have a very good reason and because I am absolutely and completely justified. This kind of justification sometimes in certain contexts doesn't really hold up. For ourselves, sometimes choosing a softer or more humble approach is actually good. Take Confucius and Laozi, for example. It seems that in their later years they met about 3 times. They often discussed matters of the Tao. I remember when Confucius turned 50, Laozi was already in his 70s. They had a 20-year age difference. When it comes to their exact ages, in Laozi's case, many scholars aren't particularly certain about this, it seems, at least for now. At that time, when they were discussing the difference between being soft and being hard, later Confucius said, Laozi pointed to his mouth at the time, opened his mouth, and there wasn't a single tooth left. He asked Confucius, look, as you can see, teeth are so hard, right? But as they're hard, in the end, they all fall out. My tongue is so soft, but as long as a person is still alive, never falls out. This shows that being soft can sometimes lead to success. I think that was roughly the meaning. But maybe some of the details in the story aren't entirely clear, so sometimes when we are soft, sometimes when we have no choice but to be soft, it's the same thing. Last year I spoke with an official. We kept discussing matters related to the temple. At first, the two of us argued hard, also separate. I had reasons and he had his temper isn't great. Mine's even worse. The two of us talked and eventually things got a little better between us. After that, he said, hey Khenpo, don't be upset. Actually, we're in this together. It's like a really, really close relationship, like the relationship between the tongue and the teeth. The tongue and teeth are together every day, as they do, but they often fight with each other as well. Sometimes, I gently remarked, taking a thoughtful pause, I'm the tongue and you're the teeth. You're always biting me, but I just can't bite back. You also know about this. Then he said, hey, let's not talk about that. That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. Sometimes, maybe, unfortunately, there's just nothing we can do about it at all. This kind of situation also often happens in real life. But here, it's mainly just a metaphor.
listening to beautiful music and then those wild beasts kill. That's the idea. Well, actually, as far as I know, there's a story like this in the West. It seems that in some churches, the story is even vividly depicted in comic form as well. In central Germany, nestled in the peaceful countryside, there's a quaint and charming little town which is known as Hamelin. In the year 1284, something happened there. For a period of time, the town was plagued by rats. There were an incredible number of rats, and they were especially troublesome. The whole village was extremely anxious, deeply worried, and very concerned about it altogether. Later, a man dressed in colourful clothes arrived. He said he had a solution, but he wanted a certain reward. They agreed to his terms. After that, he carefully lifted his flute to his lips and began to play, filling the air with a strange and mysterious sound. All the rats in the entire town came out. They followed him, and he eventually reached the riverbank. It seemed to be the Weser or another river. After he got to the riverbank, all the little rats went into the river and drowned. Then the man with the flute quietly and patiently came to carefully and deliberately collect his well-earned reward. But the people of that village, they went back on their word. They changed their minds and refused to pay him. He couldn't do anything. After some time, it was June 28th, but I forgot the date before. On the date of June 26th, specifically, when all the adults were gathered in the church at that time, man with a flute came again. His clothes were different colored. It seemed he was wearing a red hat. He played his flute again, as before, producing strange sound. At this moment in the whole village, all the children over 4 years old just simply followed him without any hesitation at all. When they followed him, there were about 130 children. Only 3 children, who seemed to be deaf or mute, did not go. He led them to the middle of the mountain and then opened a mountain gate. All the children went inside the mountain. They never came back, but the situation, because the adults were in the church, only one nanny actually saw it happen. Event timing is precise. Later, a great many scholars, including some particularly notable archaeologists, they have different views. Some say that they all received different warnings, say perhaps at that time, famine and cannibalism, and maybe, just maybe, that person actually ate them. There are also other theories. To this day, it remains a mystery. So with this kind of legend, here, on the one hand, in some places, whether it's mice or children, when they hear those truly beautiful sounds, they might become very focused, or perhaps they are genuinely captivated by those mysterious, enchanting sounds, and then they go into that place just for a little while. As a result, they might potentially encounter an unexpected disaster or perhaps something else. In our preliminary practices, isn't it also mentioned when talking about the 5 faults of the 5 senses being scattered outward? If the ear is constantly attached to sounds, always listening, it's just like a wild animal being drawn to the sound of a lute. If the eyes see beautiful sights, it's like a delicate moth fluttering into a bright, irresistible flame, and so on. These are examples given. So here too, it is said that, using the analogy of the hunter, one also accomplishes one's own aims. At such times it is necessary to endure hardship. Look at the hunter. Why exactly does he do that? Do you know? He keeps kneeling. They're always crouching down, whether it's a cat or many other beings in the world. They do this to reach their own goals. They adopt different behavior. So sometimes when people in the world want to achieve something, even if they have to endure some hardship or do certain things, it's worth it. This includes us as we seek the Dharma. Sometimes we often face worldly challenges. Today I was thinking, on the way here there was a downpour, and in every way I was soaked through by the rain. Make it path practice, since right now it's the time when the Medicine Buddha star appears in the world, and here it's actually the best kind of open air bath. Make it a spiritual practice. On the other hand, I was thinking, I hope my class can touch some people's hearts, even a little, even if it brings about a slight change. If that's the case, then even if I have to endure more hardship or suffer more cold, it is still truly worthwhile. So for each of us, sometimes, in order to obtain the Dharma, even if it means a bit of hardship, I see Dharma friends from morning till night, and they are truly consistently diligent. So we are also very moved and feel that it's really, truly, and absolutely not easy, because everyone listens to these and recites the Samantabhadra's aspiration prayer before and after. We really can't bear to cut any of it out. Sometimes I think I could teach a little less, or we shorten recitations if we do that. It seems like everyone would just use that time to get distracted. We can't do anything important, and it's not certain we could do better than this. For example, if we skip Samantabhadra's aspiration prayer, maybe 10 minutes, but in those 10 minutes, not everyone would do something more important than reciting Samantabhadra's aspiration prayer. So it's better, following the approach of our previous guru, His Holiness, place a lot of importance on these aspects. Next, let's talk about wise people often avoid doing things that displease their ruler. If you don't, you may be rejected by the king and judged by others. As a person of wisdom, there are things you must not do, such as saying or doing things your leader dislikes. Now, all of us, no matter our backgrounds or where we come from, have grown up and spent our early years in environments, so everyone should know that the person in charge, if it's in your department or in your class, if you keep doing things they don't like, you may end up in trouble if you are not careful, especially in certain situations. In the end, things will not turn out well for you, because no matter where you are in the world, not just in place, it's the same in India and even in the West nowadays. These days, in many ways, it's the same. Even though they talk about so-called democracy, such as equality and respect, there are names in any group of simply ordinary people. If you absolutely insist on going against your leader, despite my advice, unless that person steps down and you take their place, otherwise there are some situations you simply can't change yourself. If you don't change yourself, he will be the one to change you. At that point, your outcome may not be so pleasant. So at any time, perhaps really, this is also a way for a person to behave. Nowadays, some of our leaders, when a new leader arrives, some people are especially eager to curry favor, immediately offering them alcohol, cigarettes, and good food. If someone isn't a leader, they instantly treat them differently. Some people are just too pragmatic. This honestly seems a bit much too, because when this person was doing well before, everyone praised him. But as soon as he makes, even if it's just a small mistake, in a single instant, everyone's attitude changes completely. Faces that were calm just moments before now show surprise and tension as the entire group reacts. This kind of thing might not really be very good. It's just a bit too pragmatic. But for your own interests, you can't afford to offend your leader. This is for our people. Of course, many of us, there may already be such a gene in this regard. Maybe we've had this habit since childhood. Long as your leader, even if you really dislike them deep down, but on the surface, I like you very much, even say you love them, this kind of situation does exist. In fact, this approach is actually correct, and indeed it works as intended. We must never think the king is far away, so it really doesn't matter to us at all, indeed. You know, there's that old saying, the sky is high and the emperor is far away. Being completely oblivious, just thinking it doesn't really matter anyway, believing he definitely won't find out since he's simply not present at the scene. To be perfectly honest, if you look down upon him like this, things might not go well for you. Some people are just like that. If he's not around, you can really feel his absence at all. They do what they want in secret, just acting on whatever comes to mind. But actually, as a matter of fact, this kind of behavior is quite unreasonable too. When the steward isn't around, when Khenpo and Khenmo are not present, we should still have a sense of self-discipline and respect for others. This is also a particularly suitable approach for us. Our school is now in the second year. Key management personnel, my own principals are also like this. I've told you this before as well. No matter who the person in charge is, we still show them a great deal of respect, always. Of course, they also shouldn't engage in certain behaviors. I am the head of the college. This is on behalf of the college. And if you offend me acting overly domineering, maybe I won't say anything yet. But in the end, we will remember these things. Situations like this can sometimes happen If that's not the case, and their suggestions and management are overall quite reasonable, then everyone should show respect for others and themselves and be willing to comply with the established guidelines. Well, this is also indeed in its own unique way a kind of rule. After becoming a leader, those under them often end up resenting them and really want to, just like some well-known Western presidents in a similar fashion, for example, they are elected, almost everyone votes for them. But after they're in office, people start to rebel against them, saying they're about to be impeached or this or that is about to happen. And such behavior among ordinary people can be found everywhere. And it really is quite off-putting and alienating, making you feel uncomfortable and disconnected from the experience, as if you don't quite belong or are being pushed away. With understanding ministers, no need to worry. Even if a king is alone, after all, he can conquer all the worlds. Having civil and military officials who are able to understand reason and the bigger picture is also extremely important for a king. If he has such people, they will definitely protect the people. Even if the king is one person, as long as he has such ministers and assistants under him, then conquering the world is not a problem at all. So it's important to have someone by our side, no one flattering you, not one who only ever agrees with you, not someone says nice things to your face, none of that. What you need is someone who is wise, capable, someone who genuinely gets things done. This applies to everyone, whether it's a great king or small groups like our ordinary volunteer communities. A dozen people, there's a main person in charge among them, and it's very important to have key assistants under them. In Tibetan medicine, for example, we often quite frequently have situations where quite often, let's say Dujuan 16. In the case of Dujuan 16, the Dujuan herb is also called the king medicine, others called minister medicines. Looking at the formula, king medicine is most abundant. Its name is based on this. We often see formulas like D-weight 20 pills, and in many cases, the first name listed is, in this list, the most important medicine. Some of the minister medicines names might not appear, but in the formula, after the main ingredient, you need to add a bit more of the others. For example, all 16 types of medicine need to be included, as mandated by the guidelines. How Tibetan medicine works. People are also like this. If you have 16 people, king stands, but the king is the most important one. Below him, there is a wise, experienced, and highly respected minister, someone who plays a truly essential and significant role in the administration. This could be an assistant or a close aide to the leader. The people around you are the adults of many people. They play a very important role for them. If these close aides are always gossiping or stirring up trouble, if they speak with their own greed, anger, or ignorance, they can seriously ruin many people. So in history, perhaps, for example, by Liu Bang's side was the faithful Xiao He, who was also a very wise person. By Liu Bei's side, there was Zhu Zhiliang, right? Although these are examples of governing a country in the secular world, they were all extremely farsighted, very farsighted indeed. Whether it was towards the common people or everyone else, they had a certain level of genuine, meaningful insight. So for us as managers in our roles and responsibilities and the expectations we carry, including Kenpos, or heads of departments, it is important to have talented people with the main leaders. These talented people must be wise, compassionate people who can get things done. It's not about boasting and talking big every day, making things sound impressive and ornate, but when it comes to actually doing things, even their very own mother would indeed be brought to tears, wondering how her child could turn out like this. If that's the case, then it's definitely not going to work. If we are truly a great monk or a highly accomplished master, there will always be some loyal and supportive people standing quietly by his side. When one Buddha appears in the world, 1,000 Buddhas support him. If someone is truly a great monk or an accomplished master, he will have a group of capable and highly respected disciples indeed. This great master's teachings will definitely be passed down continuously. But if he simply has no worthy successors, then once he's gone, everything will disappear. So I think when the great masters of the past were about to leave, they either left behind something especially valuable, like many well-known treatises written by Mipum Rinpoche, or like Longshan Rabjam. or they had a group of highly respected disciples. After all, it's the exact same underlying principle. So for many of us, cultivating talent is also indeed truly very important. As for ordinary people, many entrepreneurs end up with no one to take over their business, and in the end, there's no way for it to be passed on. So I think here, when we talk about a monarch, specifically in this context, the people around him are still extremely important. Some people are truly remarkable, but they don't have anyone around them to offer good advice. And sometimes the people around them are completely incompetent in every aspect. In this case, whether it's for spreading the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings, or for accomplishing many other things, it will end up being a disadvantage. So sometimes we should also look at these truths of the secular world, which is actually very necessary. Wherever a ruler governs the people, he contemplates good and evil, and that land is said to have a ruler, and those people are established as his subjects. No matter where it is, in any place or region, if a monarch, regardless of location or circumstance, cares deeply, truly deeply about his people, and especially about the good and the evil, particularly regarding matters of right and wrong, good and bad aspects, this particular aspect, in my opinion, which are virtuous, which are evil, what's suffering or happiness, what is dark and what is light, what should be done and what should not be done. As a ruler, if his own subordinates, his followers, his people, or his citizens, he must pay attention to these things. Last year I said that sometimes it's best for Dharma teachers to visit the welcoming homes of each of the individual and unique disciples, all under their attentive and dedicated care. You haven't visited, you should still go and check in, get to know the situation. Sometimes you all should go as well and discreetly listen in on how they are being guided. Occasionally, observe the mindset of those under you. Let go of your own airs and have a chat with them for a moment. I want to do this, but now that I'm older, these days, I don't do much in private anymore. I have lots of things to handle, so maybe that's really all I can do. Just translating a little is probably enough. When I was younger back then, I often genuinely cared so much about everyone's daily life, including everyone's mindset and perspective in this process. I would comfort them always. Now, I mostly spend my time in seclusion working on some books. This might be the most meaningful thing in my later years. Otherwise, I think for each of us, if we truly want to support our followers, we must care about the good and bad, the happiness and suffering of those under us. We need to pay attention to all aspects. If we do this, everyone will say, we have a ruler here. We have a wise ruler here who cares about us, and that's good. For example, a department head, he doesn't manage anything, just comes by, then loses his temper and leaves. In that case, no one can stand this person. But if he comes by, even if he really doesn't have much money, and still goes along with everyone else, let's have a meal together and see how everyone eats, how tired everyone is, and he also does some work himself. In this case, everyone here, our leader is really pretty good. The previous leader wasn't like this. This new leader seems pretty good. But will he stop coming after a while? Because when someone first becomes the leader, they show up for a bit, but after some time, apart from pointing out our mistakes, never offer comfort, he doesn't do anything himself. And when he does, he's clueless. It seems like he doesn't really understand either. People might say this: if he were a wise ruler, he should also help them shoulder some responsibilities. That way, everyone would be happy. Wherever a ruler gives orders to the people without caring about good or evil, those who are wise and discerning will not rely on such a ruler. In any place, if there is a ruler who ignores the good, evil, happiness or suffering of his subordinates, or about their various other concerns, including, as some of us say, sharing joys and hardships together, whether everyone experiences pain or happiness together, in this way, everyone feels that he is our leader, and he's actually pretty good. He often does these things together with us, usually as a group, and we all participate in these activities. But if he doesn't do anything, never comes, ignores me, I've heard that, as far as I know, some Khenpos and Khenmos have taken on certain responsibilities, just like I mentioned the other day. All of you can give teachings, otherwise you couldn't become a Khenpo or Khenmo. But when it comes to actually doing things, there are obvious differences. Some people don't really have the right motivation. Some people have motivation but don't really know how to express it. Some people not only have the motivation but are also very dedicated. There are several levels as careful and attentive observers, we can actually perceive and notice this quite clearly. And some people don't consider those under them at all and ignore situations, not caring or asking. If that's the case, who with wisdom would rely on them? That's simply impossible. This is true even for some of, whether at the national level, for example, or perhaps even at the level of ordinary people. If someone truly cares about those under them, then that person is a good person. Some people care a lot, while others may not care as well. But anyway, having this kind of intention and behavior is extremely important. In fact, it is absolutely crucial to possess such qualities. Even if one's personal virtue is slight, it still brings great benefit to the world in its own way, just as even a sliver of the moon is still cherished and admired. So people with merit, even if it seems, like we discussed earlier, he may be physically frail and his influence may be weak and limited, but he can still earn the praise of the world. He himself gets recognition, and in fact he also gains a lot of social status, reputation, and wealth. His way of conducting himself, actually people do sometimes appear different at certain times or at certain moments. Those with truly great blessings often appear robust, strong, and dignified, exuding and appear to bear a monarch's bearing. Some people may not look impressive, but when it comes to actually getting things done, this person is truly remarkable. No matter where he goes, he always has his own way of doing things. We shouldn't judge people by their physical appearance or by how they look. You can't just assume that someone is incapable of anything. That's not right. Some people are actually very capable. Even if someone is thin, really shouldn't look down on other people lightly, truly. It's like the moon sometimes on the 25th or 29th day. It appears very small, just a thin crescent remains. But deity of heaven contentment is wise, and often wears the moon as a crown. So in the past, the Book of Changes also said, in a person's life, only virtue can establish a lifetime. In life, only virtue, this genuine and enduring merit most truly and indeed endures ultimately. Discipline, focus, and wisdom, what ordinary worldly people say, is that a person possesses both virtue and talent. If that's the case, he can establish his own life for himself. If a person's virtue is poor and his wisdom is very weak, and his mind has wrong views and misconceptions, this person may be the most, what people call a scumbag. If male or female, or in society, someone who is completely abandoned and unwanted by everyone. So for each of us, your appearance, your body, your status may also have something to do with your past lives. But our virtue and our wisdom, indeed truly, can sometimes be changed. Maybe you used to have a certain outlook on life, but from now on, if I am to conduct myself, indeed, as taught in the 100 Verses of Wisdom, should regularly observe, I myself still have some worldly wisdom to reflect with. Actually, if we don't understand this, if we want to understand great Madhyamaka and great perfection, it's still quite difficult. If you use this kind of wisdom too frequently, we are not asking you to observe others, especially their most secret or hidden aspects. No need. You should regularly observe and use this wisdom to measure yourself. This is not difficult. So I also hope that after we study this time, ultimately everyone's wisdom will gradually continue to grow and expand over time. If you don't have wisdom, try your very best to increase your wisdom. Be able to step out of your original limitations, your original thinking and education. If you don't know things, that's okay. Now just follow the approach of the 100 Verses of Wisdom. If we do it for a while, let's see how it goes. Maybe the results will be very noticeable. All right, that's all for today's lecture on the 100 Verses of Wisdom. As we finish, please take a moment to think.
Sonam dei tamsa thobaya tonani de jana pase kirgana jirano chupai jupun sonen draja ma bandangara badna sadarda ma bandangara badna sadarda Bandangara Banma Sadarda